the TLM 103 for the TLM 103. I just dropped my TLM 103. What's happening, Boot Junkies? Mike Dog Audio here, back with another video on home studio setup for voiceover. And today we're going to talk about this microphone right here. This is the Aston Spirit multi-pattern condenser microphone. First, I'd like to say thank you to the folks over at the Booth Junkie Discord. You're a member of the Booth Junkie Discord, right? If not, there's a link down in the description so you can come over and talk microphones with us. But the folks over at the Booth Junkie Discord helped convince Aston that we should review this microphone on this channel because this microphone has never made an appearance on this channel before. So the good folks over at Aston, I almost said Austin, the good folks over at Aston said, "Hey, Mike, you want an Aston Spirit to talk about on your channel?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So first, big ups, big thank you to the folks over on the Booth Junkie Discord for convincing Aston to send this mic over to me, and a big thank you to Aston for sending this mic over to me and letting me talk about it. I really appreciate it. Link in the description if you want to come hang out in the Discord with us. The Spirit is one of two condenser microphones that comes from Aston. They're a company out of England. They make these microphones in England, and they're actually quite affordable. And the Spirit is sort of the more capable of the two microphones, more capable in the fact that it's got like multiple patterns and stuff like that. There are two main condenser microphones in the Aston line. There's the Origin, which is a small microphone, and then there's a Spirit. That's the larger microphone. And when you see these two microphones together, one small, one tall, one has a transformer, one doesn't, one is cardioid, one has three patterns, it made me think of another set of microphones, and that is, you knew this was going to happen. That's these microphones here. This is the Neumann TLM 103, and this is the Neumann U87AI. This is a small transformerless cardioid pattern only microphone, and this is a taller, larger microphone that's multi-pattern. Same three patterns, same buttons and switches as the Spirit. So I've not spoken to anybody at Aston. I don't know if they're actually inspired by the Neumann line or if it's just a common trope to create these two microphones, but they strike me as very similar. But here's the big difference. I was listening to the Bandrew Says podcast. Podcastage? Bandrew? He has a podcast. Can you imagine that? And a while back, he was talking about the law of diminishing returns, and that there's a sweet spot for condenser microphones in the few $100 range. I forget exactly what dollar range he said, but I think this Spirit microphone epitomizes the law of diminishing returns. The Spirit is this version's $329 for the silver. There's a black version that you can also get as a bundle with a pop filter and a shock mount. That's like $350 when I checked it on Sweetwater. And that for me is kind of a sweet spot for pricing. And I'm just going to pull the Neumann in here just so we've got, another microphone to point at and to make as a comparison. Because the pricing at $329 for the Spirit is interestingly priced, because when you look at Sweetwater for the Neumann U87, it's $3,250. 320, what did I say? 329. Let me just pull up the price on Sweetwater. Yeah, $329. And then on Sweetwater for the Neumann U87, $3,295. A almost perfect order of magnitude difference between the Spirit and the Neumann. That's pretty interesting, right? When Bandrew was talking about the microphones, that law of diminishing returns, he made an excellent point, one I completely agree with. Taking the microphone, for example, the Spirit. If I had a $32 condenser microphone right next to this one, the difference in sound quality between the $32 microphone and the $320 microphone, it would be vast. The level of quality of difference between them, it would be appreciably more pleasant to listen to the Spirit, the $320 microphone, compared to the $32 microphone. Virtually guaranteed. But That same leap, add a zero to the price, going from $320 to $3,200, really $330 to $3,300 is really the difference. The difference between these two microphones, vanishingly thin, vanishingly small. I'm not saying that they sound identical. They might not. They might not have the exact same quality about them, but the difference between them is much smaller than the difference between the $32 microphone and the $320 microphone. And I think as you start to move up towards this real, sort of rarefied air of these, the high end of microphones, and the Neumann U87 is sort of like in the mid-range of the high end microphones, I suppose, from a pricing perspective. There's not a huge amount of difference between them. And you have to really establish if the $3,300 microphone has that much more to offer than the $330 microphone, especially if you're doing something like sending this signal instead of into, a console in a big professional recording studio with ultra high-end preamplifiers and, all the great outboard gear, or if you're just sending this over into your, $300, $400, $500 interface, a Focusrite Scarlett, an Audient, ID series, the UA Volt series, something like that. Is the difference between these two microphones even noticeable? And I would postulate that for the typical listener, the difference between these two microphones, to the untrained ear, nobody would even notice. Nobody would even notice at all that there was a difference between them. Especially after if you're an audiobook narrator and you're going to record it and it's going to get equalized and mastered and there might be a gate or a noise reducer, and then it's going to go through the MP3 process and get reduced down to 128 kilohertz or 192 kilohertz. It's going to get reduced. The high end's going to get chopped off to make room in the MP3. It's not going to make that much of a difference. If you're recording something for, a YouTube video where YouTube may apply some compression. If you're recording for a podcast, which again is going to end up as an MP3, is the difference between these two microphones going to show up in a way that anybody would know the difference between them? I would postulate that for 99% of the people, no one would even notice. And if they just heard the Aston Spirit by itself, they would say, that's a fine-sounding microphone. You sound just like you. You sound great. It's crystal clear. There's no noise. Everything sounds great. And if you put a Neumann right next to it and you just spoke into the Neumann and you said, yeah, this sounds exactly like a microphone's supposed to sound. It sounds crystal clear. You sound just like you. No one... I'd say probably for 99% of the people, they're not going to notice. And then if you further go in to say, well, I'm listening to this on a pair of laptop speakers. I'm listening to this on my, Apple EarPods. I'm listening to this through the phone speaker or something like that. No one's going to know the difference. No one's going to know the difference. So it's a big, long rant and rave to say, do you need to spend $3,300 for a microphone when there's a $330 option staring you right in the face? It has virtually identical features, virtually identical size, virtually identical specifications, not exactly the same specifications, but within a very narrow margin of difference. Unless you know that you need the Neumann, could the Spirit do exactly what you need it to do? For that matter, if you were trying to decide for the TLM 103, for the TLM 103, I just dropped my TLM 103. For the TLM 103, could the Origin be the same thing? This is not quite an order of magnitude difference because this is like $1,200. But the idea here is, people ask me all the time about upgrading their microphone. Boy, what's my next step up in microphone? Where do I need to go for the next microphone? And really, if you have a $350 to $500 microphone, you probably have the last microphone you really would ever need, unless you know you're going to pursue something very specific in the sound of that other microphone. Chances are these microphones, most of them, if they're from a quality manufacturer who takes pride in the product that they make, that microphone's going to do fine, and it's going to serve you well for years, for literal years. And I guess it comes down to, have you noticed? Have you noticed a difference between these two? Because I know I've had this in front of me, and I've switched back and forth a whole bunch of times. Have you noticed? Did you clock that I was switching back and forth between the Spirit and the Neumann the whole time? Could you tell that there was this really appreciable difference between the two microphones? Because I've been switching back and forth between the two microphones. And for me, to the untrained ear, if you weren't listening for it, if you weren't expecting it, you probably didn't even notice. You probably didn't even notice. $330, $3,300. That's a pretty significant difference. So it's something to think about. The Aston Spirit, $330, competes really well with a microphone that costs 10 times as much. Do I need to compare it to other microphones? Do I need to run it through a bunch of other stuff? Or have I proven the point that it's probably going to be the mic? Any of these mics are probably going to be the mic that you want. Okay, so we will run through a couple of different comparisons just so you can see how this compares to other microphones in the $350 to $500 range, just so you can see like, oh, one's brighter, one's darker, one might be more suitable to me. So we will run through some more. But hopefully the point is a long rant to hopefully make the point that made in Britain, great mic, dimensionally almost identical, super durable, really well made. I'm a fan of the Aston. I'm a fan of the Aston mics. I reviewed the Origin a long time ago, and I was a fan of that mic then. And in my using I've had the Spirit now for about a month, and I've used it for a number of recordings. It's a great sounding mic. Great sounding mic. I got no quibbles with this mic for $330. All right. Let's pop a couple of other microphones in here just so you can see how it compares to a few other microphones, just so you can get a sense of, does it sound different than any other mic in the same price point that you might be considering? All right, let's get that set up. Okay. All right. Now we have the Rode NT1 cardioid condenser microphone, comparing it side by side with the Aston Spirit. The Spirit is set in its cardioid position. The Rode has no buttons or switches or anything like that, and the Spirit right now we have set in its neutral position. It's got the high pass switch is in its flat perspective, and the padding switch is in the 0 dB, so it's not padding at all. But these definitely could be two microphones that are on your radar from a voiceover perspective. They run not too dissimilar from a pricing perspective. I'll have links to all this stuff so you can go look at what the latest prices are. But this would be a very natural comparison to say, oh yeah, I'm looking for a certain price point for a microphone that I can do voiceover with. This would certainly be a comparison that would be on your radar. So I wanted to give you a chance to just go side by side and see if you prefer the way one sounds over the other. As you can hear, they both sound good. They're both going to sound like you, but there's going to be subtle differences between the two, and one may resonate with you more so than the other. The switches, the buttons and switches, they may be handy from a voiceover perspective. Sometimes the padding switch can come in handy. The fact that the Rode doesn't have one, it's not really a big deal. I use plenty of microphones that don't have that pad switch, so don't fret about that too much because you can always just turn the gain down on your interface for any time you have to get really super loud. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. But some people like to have that switch, so if they're doing something where they suddenly have to scream, they can flip that switch right in the booth and not have to go mess with their interface. Anyway, so this has been a comparison of the Rode NT1 and the Aston Spirit. Okay, next up, we've got a comparison between, this is the CAD E100SX, brand new from CAD Audio, and the Aston Spirit. These are two pretty different microphones. I'm going to guess you're going to hear a pretty different tone between them. The CAD, the E100SX, this is a super cardioid microphone, which means that it's got a slightly narrower pattern where it's maximally sensitive. So as you move in front of the microphone, there's a tendency that as you move off to the side of a microphone, it doesn't hear you as well when it's in one of the cardioid patterns. The super cardioid of the CAD E100SX, it's just a little bit narrower. So as opposed to when you move over to the side, I'm at a full 90 degrees to the Spirit, it does it can hear you a little bit more to the side. That can have its pros, that can have its cons. It's really just a matter of which one will work best for your booth. Sometimes the super cardioids can be a tiny bit more forgiving to a less than ideal space, especially if you've got a source of noise that's generating noise on the other side of the mic. The super cardioids can sometimes hear that noise source, PC fan or something like that, hear that a little bit less. Again, we're in the same similar price point. You should hear that there is a difference between the way they sound. Again, neither one of them, to my opinion, neither of them sound bad. They just sound different, and hopefully one will sound more preferable than the other. I'll leave it to you to decide which that is, but sometimes it will help to hear from a comparison standpoint which one sounds more preferable, since we all have our preferences. All of the mics I'm going to show you, they're all good choices, but they're all going to sound a little tiny bit different. And we're up at this point where you're going to last. This microphone will hopefully last you for years. You want the one that sounds the way you want it to sound. So that's the CAD E100SX. Next up, we have a microphone that's slightly more expensive than the Spirit. This is the Lewitt LCT 540 Sub-Zero. But again, another very popular choice with voice actors. Again, these may sound somewhat different, but it gives you a chance to just see, how the sound difference is between them. I think the Lewitt is probably a couple of $100 more. I think this microphone's in the $500 to $600. I have a link. I can't remember the price off the top of my head. There'll be a link down in the description if you want to see what the current price is for any of the mics. I'll have links to all of them. But again, another microphone that will get a lot of use in the voiceover booth. This is a cardioid pattern. And it has the same sort of padding switches. What's interesting about the LCT 540 Sub-Zero is it does have a feature where you can, press a sequence of buttons on the microphone, deliver your performance, the way you're going to perform it as a rehearsal, and it will tell you if you need to pad the microphone down. So in addition to having the pad, it will tell you if you need to pad it down, and will set that for you. Whereas with the Spirit, like most other microphones out there, you actually have to manually flip the switch. Anyway, it's just another microphone that may be on your radar at a similar price point to the Spirit to see how do they compare. So there you go. That's the LCT 540 Sub-Zero. And now, just to bring it home, figure might as well show it here. This is the Neumann TLM 103. Sorry, it's not in its normal Neumann pop filter. I broke the elastic, or shock mount. I broke the elastic in mine. It wore out, so it's being ordered. But this is the Rycote USM shock mount, which is excellent. Anyway, this is the comparison between the TLM 103 from Neumann, super common from a voiceover perspective. Will run you about, I think, $1,200 is the price right now. For a lot of people, this is the last and forever microphone that they might have. So I wanted to just give you one more side by side so you can see how does the $330 microphone compare to the $1,200 microphone, both that might be on your radar. Anyway, so that is a comparison of those two microphones, and hopefully that gives you enough to get a sense of the sound. And there you have it, the Aston Spirit microphone. I really believe that this is really one of those sweet spots for that law of diminishing returns. It's a great microphone at a great price that is going to be durable, it's going to be long-lasting, it's going to sound good. So if this is a microphone that's on your radar, hopefully this has helped you decide if the microphone is right for you. That's all I have for you today, and I hope that helps. I really do hope it helps. Now, go get yourself a microphone. Any microphone, maybe one with this cool filter, this cool this cool grill, man. I love the way that grill looks. But get yourself a microphone, any microphone, so you can get out there, you can record something amazing. Thanks. We'll talk to you next time. Be well. Take care.